Welcome and thank you for joining us today for the first panel discussion of day 2 of the Middle East North Africa Power and Water Summit. Today's programme is focusing on water, and this panel discussion is focusing on the most important part of the water sector, which is desalination. And specifically, we're talking over the next hour about the future of desalination in the Middle East and North Africa. This is a sector that's fundamental to ensuring water security in the region, which is obviously tied with food security as well. And it's going through an enormous amount of change. We're seeing technological change as the development of membrane-based reverse osmosis technology is rolled out, separating the electricity generation from the water production side of the process. And we're also seeing the increasing use of private finance to deliver water projects and desalination projects, with huge initiatives around the world, around the region, to bring in private finance, particularly in Saudi Arabia and Egypt, but also in the UAE and other markets too. So a lot going on, and we have a wonderful panel of speakers to navigate through some of these issues. I would like to invite you, the audience, as well, to join this conversation. As I said, it's an important conversation for the Middle East region, and particularly in the current environment where we're trying to reduce the carbon footprint and the energy consumption from the region. COP26 is taking place right now in Glasgow in Scotland, and decarbonisation and energy transition are really at the heart of the regional agenda right now. So send in your questions. You can use the comments tab on the right-hand side to send in questions and comments, and I will field them to our panelists. Now, I'll introduce the panelists. I'm delighted to be joined by 4 very eminent and expert industry leaders from across the region. Louay Kadir is the Water Sector Leader and Regional Development Director for Mott MacDonald, based here in the UAE. Mott MacDonald is, of course, one of the world's biggest consultants, with a huge history going back, hundreds of years probably, covering civil infrastructure and water. So thank you, Louay, for joining us. We're also joined by Fatima Al-Shaygi, who is the Vice President of UAE Asset Management for Abu Dhabi National Energy Company, TAQA. And Abu Dhabi and UAE is at the forefront of the global energy conversation, and TAQA in particular is right at the sort of spearhead of the UAE approach, both investing globally and regionally and locally in water and energy projects. So thank you, Fatima, for giving us your time. I know how busy you must be. In the region's biggest market, Saudi Arabia, one of the most important companies and project organizations is the Shuaibah Water and Electricity Company, and its related company, the Shuaibah Expansion Project Company. And we're very lucky to have with us Mohsen Al-Salmi, who is the Executive Managing Officer for Shuaibah Water and Electricity Company. Mohsen, thank you so much for joining us today. It's going to be fascinating to hear about your organization, but also Saudi Arabia and its water initiatives as well, which obviously are a huge part of the Green Initiative announced just in the past month by the Kingdom. And last but certainly not least, Andy Biffen is the Director of Water Capacity Procurement for EWEC, Emirates Water and Electricity Company. EWEC has been one of the most prominent, one of the most important organizations in the development of the energy and water sector in the region, and it's got a leading role to play in I guess, setting a direction of travel for the region in the energy transition, as well as being a fundamental organization to the UAE and its own energy and water security. So welcome, Andy. Thank you for your time today as well. So that's our panelists. Take this opportunity to send in your questions, get involved. It's a very, very important conversation, and this is a great opportunity to really get to hear what the leaders think in this sector. Louay, if I can start with you. Mott MacDonald, you represent a consultant. You look across the region and around the world. Can you set out your keynote thoughts? What are the sort of 3 or 4 main points that you would observe about the future of desalination in the Middle East?
Assalamu alaikum. Good day to everybody, and thank you, Richard, for your kind introduction, and thanks for having me on this panel. Ed previously had managed to present in an excellent way a view about the market, the size of the market, etc. So I would like to look into the main themes I foresee the industry would be focusing on. And I would like to tackle that into three main themes under the title of the 3Ds: diversity, digitization, and decarbonization. And on diversity, it's quite clear, based on research that has been conducted in the last couple of years, utilities as a business, it's still far behind other sectors. And I can drill a little bit detail on the following sub-themes. The first one is on gender. Currently, the utilities, they have around 17% female representation, which is still very low. And when you go to the operational side of the business, that can go down to 5%. And this definitely needs to be changed. While on the soft side, marketing, customer service, etc., that's around, I would say, up to 50%. Now, the other sub-theme is on the digital front. As a business, we are still attracting only 8% from what we call Generation Z, which is basically less than 24 years old, to our industry compared to other sectors too. So in order for us to make a change and drive it, we need to attract more of younger, technical savvy generation to make the difference. And the third part of this theme is nationalization. We are in GCC representation, I would say between 15 to 29 age group. They are around a quarter in the GCC. And unemployment is still high. It can reach up to 30% in some countries and single digits in some. However, still the unemployment for female, it's 3 times the male. So combining these three sub-themes together, I foresee that the private sector needs to step up and come in and help governments and the public sector to make sure we attract and we have the right representation. So this is the first theme.
Louis, sorry to interrupt. I know that I said I wouldn't, but just on this point, which is very important, is the question about the lack of people, particularly females, wanting to come into engineering and into water? Or is it that there are plenty of qualified people, but they want to go and work in a different industry, in finance or, I don't know, oil and gas or something?
I think both. So the question for the low representation of females and the high unemployment is basically a skill mismatch of what is required for this industry and what is available. The second element would be the high employment within the public sector. And as we all know, the more numbers you have there, you have the less impact you can get from innovation, from let's say, addressing the critical issues. And that's why I see that the public sector and government, they cannot do everything all the time. They need the private sector to step up and help them across the board. Now, going to the second theme, the digitization, there is no doubt that going forward, we need to focus on specific themes within digitization. And a common theme nowadays is the customer experience. It's getting more and more important, and customers, they are more intelligent and they are demanding for more activities and more transparency. However, we need also to continue to drive efficiency on energy level, on chemical consumption, etc. And on top of that, we need to protect. So the cybersecurity, data protection, etc. needs to be also paramount in our approach. Now, in order to get the maximum of that optimization, it's all about data. So the more data we have, cleaning the data, which is the quality of the data, is quite important. Then after that, you apply the necessary machine learning and other aspects to get the best optimization. And again, private sector spending. Last year, around 34 billion spent on water, digital, in 2020. Majority of that was on networks, and majority of that was on data collection. And I foresee this will continue going forward. And the last theme is the decarbonization. There is no doubt that the top of the agenda today is the decarbonization, the net zero schemes, etc. And I don't see the desalination is different. However, we need always to look at and answer the fundamental questions, which starts with either we build nothing, actually, do we need that plant? Do we need that pipeline? Then you go to build less, whether it's solar capacity, smaller sizes, etc. Then you go to build smart, where you get the BIM, the digital twin, the material, the offsite engineering, all kind of enhancement. And the last piece would be built efficiently, which is basically rethinking the whole thing. Doing the same things, but online. This is not creativity. This is not new. We need to rethink the way we design, we plan, and we organize. And from that, I will give just 3 simple examples on desalination. If we tackle the top and main parts, such as concrete, steel, and aluminium, and UAE at the far front of pushing that, we can reduce the carbon footprint for these plants. Such as in concrete, you can adjust the mix to a certain extent, and this will reduce the carbon footprint. On aluminium, you can also source low carbon bauxite, and you work on the energy, etc. So you will end up with a low carbon aluminium. And another thought is when you mandate the supply to local businesses or the local authorities, this will reduce, of course, the transportation. So if you mandate steel to be sourced from within the city or within the country, this will help reducing the carbon. Combining the 3 themes together, so we are combining the excellence, which is the innovation and mainly coming from the private sector, along with the digital, which is again private sector and the future. This will drive a better commercial and social outcomes for the government, private sector, and the users.
Okay, just thank you, Louis. I can see that we've already had a question that has come in for you, but I'll save that until we've been around the other panelists. But just from me, on this point about decarbonisation, I mean, obviously this is right at the top of everyone's agenda these days. We're seeing this transition from the state delivering water and utilities into the private sector. Who is best to deliver decarbonisation? Is it best coming from the top down with where the government mandates these requirements in their tender documents, or is it best coming from the private sector where it's the efficiencies over the life cycle that are driving, the kind of return on investment that's driving the agenda? Who's best placed to drive decarbonisation in the water sector?
In my view, I think both. So definitely you need to have the framework, the regulation, to set the scene and guide the implementation. However, private sector, especially global companies, they have the luxury of presence in different markets, and sometimes they are more mature markets than others, so you can learn from or adapt. And that's why a combination of both that would lead to what is called at the moment there's a new nexus, Richard, which is the water, carbon, money nexus. And this is where the more you do carbon friendly assets or industry, there is no doubt that this will attract the right funds, the right spending, and hence will give the priority to this industry to move forward. So it's a mix of both and a new nexus that need to be adopted and move forward.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Louis Kadir. You're the water sector leader and regional development manager for Mott MacDonald. If anyone has questions for Louis or any of our other panelists, please use the comment tab to submit those questions. So diversity, digitalisation, and decarbonisation, that's our 3 themes, I guess. I'd like now to move to Saudi Arabia and to bring in Mohsen Al-Salmi. Mohsen is the Executive Managing Officer for the Shuaibah Electricity Company and for the Shuaibah Expansion Project Company. Welcome, Mohsen. Thank you so much for your time today. Perhaps you could just set out your keynote themes on desalination, the future of desalination in this region. But maybe you could tell us a little bit about the Shuaibah Water and Electricity Company and the Saudi market as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Richard. Thank you, all the audience. Actually, when we start talking about the water future and desalination industrial, that means we are talking about sustainability. We need to look to for me, I need to look to the three crucial pillars, which will have an instrumental impact on the future of the desalination. When I talk about these three pillars, it is demand, renewable energy, and power consumption. I will go through each one of them. When we are talking about demand, it is driven normally the demand from my point of view, it is driven by three drivers. First driver, it is population growth, which is in Saudi Arabia now 1.4%, and it is expected to be 1.2% by 2030. The other driver, which is very aggressive driver, it is co-op with 2030 vision and beyond. And third driver is the asset retire. Actually, there is an asset that will be retired due to thermal concept, as it is the recent development in RO power consumption make the thermal unfeasible at this stage. And another thing for retired asset, it is miscellaneous of all the RO technology. Putting all that in consideration, desalination plant capacity in KSA expected to be doubled from 2020 to 2030. And this, it will be shaping our future for desalination, one of the main pillars. The other pillar is renewable energy. When I talk, we are, for example, in Aqua Power, we lay down our strategy to have 100% renewable driven desal with validity of two approach, either to use net metering in the grid or to build a plant stand alone with a full integrated renewable system. Actually, we are now commissioning the world's largest RO, Tawila, 909,000 cubic meter a day, with integrated renewable portion. That means this direction is already there, and the ultimate goal to go for 100% of renewable energy to supply the RO plant. The third pillar, which is the power consumption. In 2010, when we start, for example, at that time, Shuaibah expansion project, the power consumption was in the range of 5 kilowatts per cubic meter. And we are now, in particular world, about 3 kilowatts per cubic meter, which is represent 40% reduction of power consumption during only 10 years. When we look to this transition, it is clear advancement in technology, main equipment efficiency, and optimization. Even though RO has become now today a mature industrial technology, but still the industrial will aim to reduce the power consumption further. And I believe, in my opinion, the focusing area will be on main equipment efficiency, research and development in membrane and operator excellency, and the artificial intelligence or machine learning. This it will be having this is the area where we need to focus to reduce further the power consumption, as the power consumption is an ultimate goal for water sector in terms of carbon footprint reduction or water affordability. Other desalination technology developer and research center will be under high pressure to provide lower power consumption, changing the water desalination future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohsen. If I can just ask you on that's a very interesting point you made at the end there about power consumption. So if I understood correctly, you've seen a 40% reduction from 5 kilowatts per cubic meter, kilowatt hours per cubic meter down to 3 kilowatt hours per cubic meter. I think you said over 10 years, but certainly a 40% reduction. How much more can you bring that power consumption down? I mean, that's a fantastic reduction in power. How much further can you come down from that?
Okay, actually, if we look to the change here, one of the blame, it is not only one one not private sector or not research. It is collaboration work between utility, developer, and also the manufacturer and main manufacturer for membrane and for other activity. When we look to how we bring this one, we first of all there is a real development in terms of the membrane industry, and after that there is a huge optimization, and also the OEM for main equipment like pump and variable speed pump. All this concept has been improved and taken to the edge to bring down the efficiency and to become more efficient. All this, and also the excellency of the operation, all this has been together driving the reduction of the power consumption.
Okay, and you mentioned in the the machine learning, membrane technology, and operator excellence. So operator excellence is that I thought was interesting because Louis also mentioned skills and the need to develop skills. So are you increasing investment in training and recruitment focus, to push that?
Yes, part operator excellence, it is one area, it is learning, and other area also it is digitalization. For example, when we talk about our operation in Aqua Power, for example, we are implementing NBC Center where we can detect the failure and we can go through the efficiency through digitalization system, and this is all to improve this. It will also bringing the additional value in terms of operator excellence.
Okay. And then final question from me. You talked about Saudi Arabia's plan to double its desalination capacity from 2020 to 2030, as part of the wider Vision 2030 and Green Initiative programs. And most of that, I think, will come from private development through companies such as Aqua Power. But you've set out some incredible achievements in terms of power consumption and cost reductions. Does it become less attractive as the benchmarks and the standards get higher and higher? Does it become a law of diminishing returns for an investor? How can investors continue to sort of maintain these high levels of returns if the targets are now getting tougher?
Yes. Actually, the driver, as we said from the beginning, that today in 2010 we were in the 5 kilowatt, and that cost it was until today it is expensive. It is not benefit for investor also. Okay. Therefore, as we reduce the initial cost of the project, the investor will be more eager to invest in such project. For me, I see it is positive point because we are reducing the cost, we are having optimization, we are improve our operation, we are pushing the technology provider to go to the limit and to bring down all the costs, where still the investor will be interesting and it will be a good area for investing.
Okay, that's fantastic. If anyone has questions for Mohsen or for any of our other panelists, please use the comment tab on the right-hand side. I can see that we have got some questions coming in, which I will come to in just a moment. But thank you very much, Mohsen, for your comments. I would now like to move across the region to the UAE and to introduce Fatima Al-Shaygi, who is the Vice President for UAE Asset Management at the Abu Dhabi National Energy Company, TAQA. Welcome, Fatima. Thank you very much for your time. Now, obviously, we want to hear your comments on the future of desalination in the region, but I'm also interested to hear about TAQA, TAQA's strategy or changing strategy. I always think of TAQA as investing outside the region. I know that that's an old, that's out of date, that thinking. But if you could tell us a little bit about TAQA as well as your thoughts on the future of desal.
Absolutely. Thank you, Richard, and thank you all participants here on the panel. Let me start with highlighting the latest announcement of the UAE strategy of reaching the carbon neutrality. And this is basically putting an emphasis on the climate change goals and the achieving the sustainability targets. However, given that water desalination is a big portion of our existing portfolio, as well as our future ambitions, we at TAQA are putting huge efforts into continuing to grow this specific market, as well as ensuring that we provide the sector and the Emirate of Abu Dhabi the required sort of supply when it comes to water itself, given the criticality of the expansion of all commercial and industrial aspects within UAE and the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. However, TAQA is looking into specifically the reverse osmosis technology. As many of you may know, the RO technology is more cost efficient in terms of commercial aspect, as well as when it comes to the carbon intensity. It is considered as a more efficient option or solution in comparison to the thermal water desalination. However, and to add to what I've said, when it comes to the commerciality and the technical aspect of it, RO as well, and to be specific, when it comes to the decoupling. Decoupling is a hot topic in the sector, and basically the decoupling of the water from the power helps the utilities to really have an efficient source of water, while at the same time avoiding the necessity of running a power plant at the maximum while using a fraction of it only for producing drinking water. It is really important here to look at the maximization of efficiency, whereby TAQA is looking into RO by building one of the largest RO technologies in the world. And this in the future will take around 2/3 of our portfolio within TAQA moving forward. What I would like to here emphasize on and highlight is basically TAQA's priorities. TAQA's priorities are basically lies within 3 main pillars, and those pillars are growth when it comes to the generation capacity and including the efficient technologies when it comes to desalination like RO. Moreover, we look into optimization. Optimization is a key pillar for TAQA to look into how we can efficiently operate our existing operations, as well as building capabilities. And here, maybe to touch upon an important element that Luay have mentioned earlier, which is basically TAQA always keeps the importance of expertise building within the sector, within the market and the region. And again, RO is one of our main focuses, whereby we build expertise in the sector, as well as ensuring the retainment of those expertise within the field to share knowledge and know-how within the sector and the region. In addition, TAQA is looking to expansion of O&M capabilities in water desalination and RO moving forward.
Thank you very much, Fatima. Now, if anyone has questions for Fatima or any of our other panelists, please use the comments tab on the right-hand side of your screen. Fatima, a couple of points I wanted to follow up on there. You said that your ambition at TAQA is to have 2/3 of your capacity coming from reverse osmosis. I presume you mean water production capacity coming from reverse osmosis. What is the current percentage? I mean, how big a change does that represent?
Well, at the moment, as you know, we've got Tawila RO, which is the first or the largest RO plant that is around 200 MIGD. And it's also worth here to mention that it has a sustainability element, that is around 50 megawatt solar power that supports the production of the water. Nevertheless, this comes in line with the UAE ambitious to reach the carbon neutrality and basically to expand further into the RO technology for more efficient and low fuel intensive technologies moving forward.
Okay, and then the other thing that you touched on, I don't know if I misunderstood this. You talked about expertise in reverse osmosis. Now, I had two sort of questions on that. One was, does TAQA only invest in projects, or do you invest in the technology development as well? So patents and intellectual property. Is that a sort of strategy for TAQA?
So at the moment, TAQA invests into the projects themselves, but looking into the long-term strategy, TAQA is at the moment looking into expansion of O&M capabilities. And here, I think there is a very crucial element that I'd like to clarify here, whereby, again, tapping into Luay's point of building expertise and building the know-how of how to operate those long-term projects moving forward, you obviously would need people from a technical perspective, engineering perspective, to be able to run those plans in an efficient manner.
And then one final question from an investment point of view is, where does the balance sit between commercial return on investment and the ESG return on investment? You know, the decarbonisation element, or the environmental element of your investment. Is it all about return on investment financially, and then ESG is a nice bonus, or is it primarily about climate change and decarbonisation, and the profits are a bonus?
I would say it's a mix of both. So as you know, TAQA is a commercially driven entity. Nevertheless, being a national entity within the sector, we do recognize the ESG part of it. And as part of our strategy, one of our main focuses is sustainability. And obviously looking into the most efficient technologies from a commercial perspective, yet at the same time, it needs to be more of sustainable and clean. And to add to that, TAQA is as well from a generic portfolio perspective, not only within power, and not only, within water, we're looking into as well expansion of clean energy technologies when it comes to the power part of it. So I would say it's mix of both. It's ESG and continuation of the role that TAQA is playing in terms of sustainability and reduction of carbon footprint, yet at the same time ensuring enough supply to the UAE and to the Emirates of Abu Dhabi when it comes to water and power at the same time.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Fatima. And if anyone has questions for Fatima or any of our panelists, please use the comment tab on the right-hand side. Thank you, Fatima. Andy Biffen, I'd like to bring you in now. Thank you for your patience and for your time. You are the Director of Capacity Procurement at EWEC, so Emirates Water and Electricity Company. So you're on the government side, and the fact that you've got capacity procurement in your job title means that a lot of people on this audience will want to know where you're going to be spending money, what are the drivers of your procurement strategy, and actually, how does it differ, the government strategy compared to what we've just heard from the sort of investment approach? So, yeah, perhaps you could summarize the sort of what's the focus of your job at the moment? What are the priorities for EWEC's procurement strategy?
Certainly. Well, good morning, Richard, panelists and attendees of the conference. There's a lot of exciting things happening in the UAE, and particularly in EWEC at the moment. Our main focus in terms of water is decoupling, and we've heard a lot about that this morning. We have a number of projects moving forward, and these projects are really our responsibility to ensure that we implement the best technology and that we can operate that best technology in the preferred way going forward. I think a number of things have come together recently. There's been changes in the cost of renewable energy. So it gives us a better and cleaner source of energy for desalination. In the UAE, we've implemented nuclear energy. So again, there's a zero carbon energy source. And of course, as we've heard, the cost of RO has reduced and the operating cost, the energy efficiency of RO has improved. I think just sort of cast our minds back to 25 years ago when a lot of these cogen projects were implemented. It was the best technology of the day. It was proven, and we could implement those projects using private investment. And clearly with our partners TAQA, that's been a model that's been very successful going forward. The energy consumption of those MEED, well, we start with the MSF units, that was about 20 kilowatts a cubic meter. And that reduced to somewhere between sort of 7 and 12 kilowatt hours a cubic meter for MEDs. And we're now talking about an energy consumption of between 2 and 3 kilowatt hours per cubic meter. So huge.
For multi-stage flash or for reverse osmosis?
For reverse osmosis, yeah. Such as our Tawila project. So, sort of 2.5 kilowatt hours per cubic meter for RO going forward. So I think it's also worth just remembering that when the thermal desalination plant is running in cogeneration mode and the plant is running at full load, that high energy that is needed, the thermal energy, is coming from predominantly a waste thermal source. So it works well in a base load situation. But as we move forward and we see, greater implementation of renewables and also nuclear, we need to pull back on the power generation from thermal sources, and that clearly has an impact on the heat rate of the overall cogeneration plant. To sort of throw a few numbers out there, we're able to produce water in the UAE at about sort of 40 cents a cubic meter all in cost now. So that's capacity and energy cost going forward. We have a program to implement about 400 MIGD in the next, the 5 years, 2025 to 2029. And that should give us an overall saving of about $2 billion during that period, plus fuel savings, which will be many millions of dollars per year. So there's a significant change here going forward. We've already successfully had financial close on the Tawila project, which is now in construction. And the first phase of that is being successfully commissioned and is producing water. We've got 2 other projects that are now in the stage just prior to issue of RFP, so they will be issued very shortly. That produces another that will represent 150 MIGD of water, which will come in about the middle of 2025. I think the other point I'd like to mention is RO gives us a lot more flexibility in terms of locating these projects. So 2 projects we're looking at now that hopefully will be operational sort of mid 2026, are projects that will be located very close to Abu Dhabi city. So they will be on the outskirts. You can do that with RO because you don't need a power station, you just need an electrical supply. But in doing this, we save a huge amount on pumping losses, and it brings that capacity close to the city. And you might say, well, it improves some of the reliability of the system, although we haven't suffered with poor reliability in the past. But it gives you all sorts of options going forward.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, Andy. On your the point about driving efficiency, and following on my question to Fatima about the role of the private sector and the role of the government sector, how do you structure these targets from a procurement point of view? Does the risk sit with? Do you set the targets and then you pass all that risk on to the investor, or do you sort of leave it open and ask them to come forward with their best possible targets? And how do you drive those efficiencies through procurement?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, we have a functional spec, and you know, we know the technology that we need or we wish to implement. We're not a technology company, so we rely on the market to give us the best technology, but it also needs to be proven technology. Now, thankfully, those are moving swiftly, you know, forward, and the best technology is generally proven and is acceptable to lenders and investors, as we've seen with Taweela. So I don't think we have too many issues with that. Again, moving forward, we will continue with the private investment model. So investors or bidders will bid for a project. They will, you know, hopefully be selected for that project, go forward with 60% government investment interest in that project through financial close and operation and ownership.
And then one question about the importance of nuclear. You know, Abu Dhabi has obviously, it's really opened up a new era, I guess, for the region in terms of nuclear. And you talked about the importance of the baseload situation for desalination, and of course the flexibility you get from reverse osmosis, you know, with locating plants if you've got that electricity supply. So is that nuclear plant, you know, its ability to provide a baseload that's carbon free and also an electricity load, does that change the equation for your thinking in terms of development of water desalination?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this isn't a power conference, but it's important to consider that side of the equation. A gas turbine, you know, that's our thermal power source here. A gas turbine is best run at full load to get the best heat rate. So as soon as you start turning these machines down, you impact on the efficiency. Moving forward, when Baraka's fully operational, we need to continue to run that thermal plant in its best mode of operation, and also considering the impacts of solar energy, which will be operational during the day. So we need to have in future a much more flexible power generation source. Decoupling power and water gives us that opportunity. So it's something of a no-brainer to move in that direction, but it does need a lot of consideration when you consider what power generation mix you have left.
Yeah. And I'm interested as well, we've talked throughout this morning about the efficiencies with digitalisation in plant operations, but you made a passing reference to the losses through the pipeline network. You know, I don't know the sort of exact numbers, but, you know, I understand that there's 40% losses are quite normal around the world in water pipelines. I mean, that must be as significant as the inefficiencies, you know, in an undigitalized plant.
Yeah, no, sorry, to be clear, I'm talking about energy losses for pumping. So you may not call it a loss, it's really just an operational cost. When the network was first established, so we got a lot of water and power generation in the south of the country, and there was little demand in that area. That's now grown. There was to continue to be water production in that area to support that local demand. But having RO in a more compact form, it gives us the opportunity to move that production closer to Abu Dhabi and remove the operational cost of pumping.
Very good. Well,
so
sorry, I interrupted you there. I apologize.
Yeah, no. So that's an exciting opportunity that we clearly, we're looking to enhance on and move forward with some projects more local to Abu Dhabi.
Okay, Andy Biffen, thank you very much, Director of Capacity Procurement from EWEC. Right, I'm going to go to some questions now. They've been coming in as we've been talking. The first one is for Mohsen at Shuaibah Water and Electricity, Saudi Arabia. Sorry, did I hear a noise just now? So this is from Pramod, and he says, perhaps Mohsen or some of the other panelists can answer this.
Okay.
We find that some plants in the regions have legacy systems are legacy systems cyber secure, and are there plans to upgrade them? And does your vendor registration allow new players? So I don't know if the new players is referring to cybersecurity or new players generally, but Mohsen, perhaps I could come to you first. Is cybersecurity an issue with legacy systems? Do you have plans to upgrade? And how can new vendors register?
Okay, actually, in cybersecurity, it was one of the drive for Aqua Power in all the fleet of Aqua. It is not only in Shuaibah, to take serious action since 2013. From 2013, we start our program. We take many of steps towards cybersecurity, and today, for example, in Saudi Arabia, we have NCA regulatory and authority, which is also put in the place the right control to control the cybersecurity. Our legacy system, it is secured, and according to the NCA regulation and whatever. And this is actually, it is one of the right way to invest to protect your company, to improve your cybersecurity. We start by different steps like complete isolation for the industrial network completely, and updating all the system. Many of the steps and many of the action has been taken towards cybersecurity to ensure alignment with global and local regulation.
And on the question of vendor registration,
I think this is no issue for that. There will be some rule for registration, and the people, they can follow in each, because also this registration and abroad vendor, it is also follow under the regulation.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Andy, if I can come back to you on the same question about cybersecurity. Now, I'm guessing that that's one of the priority areas for you when you're upgrading or building new capacity. You know, are legacy systems a problem for EWEC to think about? You're on mute. Sorry, Andy.
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. Not just EWEC, but you know, as we just heard, it's across the sector. It's certainly something that we need to consider. And when we're talking about water systems, you know, I wouldn't want to downplay it, but it's perhaps less important in the short term as power generation, because of course you can have a storage facility, but no, it's something that we need to keep an eye on, and you know, we need to implement with these new projects and work with our partners at TAQA on this.
And Louis, in terms of the work that Mott MacDonald does, are you seeing lots of clients asking to retrofit new data systems and cybersecurity protections?
Yeah, it's becoming more popular and part of the mix. But also we started seeing the global players such as Amazon and others. They are investing heavily in region to make sure they have in-country data centers with the right support and security. I think this is a step in the right direction to help host the data and at the same time protect it in a comfortable way for governments and utility providers.
Okay, thank you. And Fatima, as you know, you're the Vice President for Asset Management, so I'm guessing that cybersecurity is one of your highest priorities.
Absolutely, Richard. So in terms of cybersecurity, we as TAQA always keep it at the forefront, whereby we're serving a critical sector here within Abu Dhabi and the UAE. And we follow the international and the legal, the local standards when it comes to cybersecurity. So it is crucial always to keep this as a priority. And as TAQA, when it comes to our power and water plants, this is something that we always keep an eye on.
And Pramod, the questioner, he also asked about vendor registration. So Fatima, just in terms of TAQA, how does someone register to be a vendor for TAQA?
Obviously, there is in the official website a section for vendor registration. It's publicly available, and you can always go there and register as per the steps.
Thank you very much. Now, a question also for you, Fatima. This is from Tashin, and it's about startups. And now, I don't know if this is so much about TAQA or just generally, but how do you empower startups and entrepreneurs to get involved in the utility sector in the Middle East?
This is a very good question. And as you've mentioned, Richard, this might not be specifically for TAQA, but just speaking on behalf of the Abu Dhabi Emirates and being a UAE national, I think there is a great opportunities out there. There are many innovative young people in the market who are very keen to invest in renewable and in the energy sector, generally speaking. And there are certain platforms that can be tapped into when it comes to the startups. Definitely, it's not something that within the focus of TAQA at the moment, but nevertheless, there are many platforms within the Emirate of Abu Dhabi that are publicly available, whereby those individuals can tap into easily.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Fatima. And of course, we've heard from pretty much all of the panelists today about the importance of skills and expertise and bringing in technology. And that's exactly, I think, where startups and entrepreneurs can provide a service that these companies are looking for. So thank you. And on that topic, so MEED is running its SME Awards next month, and we're looking for all entrepreneurs and startups to tell us about their businesses and their initiatives, and we work with government agencies across the region on that. So, we're here to help as well for anyone in that space. Louis, if I can come back to you, we have another question. This is also from Pramod. Now, it's about digitalisation programs in the water industry. And he says, from his knowledge, data sits today in silos and in islands. Does this help digitalisation? Is this a problem? And what are the initiatives to make data more transparent, more accessible? And obviously, the key with data is sharing, isn't it? So that people are working off common platforms. What are the initiatives to address that?
Yeah, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Pramod, for the question. Let me tackle that by starting with the market in general. Now, across the board, the markets are at different maturity levels. So if you go to the UK or let's say the West part, US, UK, and also we can add even Australia, the maturity level when it comes to utilities is more and higher. And that's why the adaptability and the adoption to digital solutions, changes, etc., is easier. So that's one part. Now, also the private sector representation is also higher compared to where we see in our region. So this is an important factor. The second factor is approaching it as a simple pyramid, what we call the smart infrastructure. So you have the lower part of the pyramid where it's all sort of data, whether it's social data, whether it's VIM, whether it's GIS, everything that is all there. And I think this is what Pramod is referring to. You have a lot of data, but they are in silos and they are not connected. The middle layer of that pyramid is what we call the platform, where you connect all this neutrally and start getting the best value of that data, cleaning it, integrating it, and maximizing the benefit of it. Now, the outcome of that layer will go to the top, where we call it enhancement of the decision making. So you get the insights, and this is where the decision makers, such as capacity building or managing an existing asset or investment, this all would be tailored or with the right visibility to make that investment. Now, I will re-quote again on the spending that has happened in 2020. When you see $34 billion spent on digital last year in water, that's a lot of money. And predominantly it's towards the network. And as you know, the major item related to network is the leakage. However, there is another 20% or so on customer related investment in digital. And that's why I recode the idea of the new customer experience. Customers, they are, take UAE for example, we have 200 plus nationalities, we have diversity at its best. The expectations are really wide and they would expect the best. So from digital perspective, I think it's a great opportunity to come and invest and provide the right platform for it. And with big investors like the data center guys now, they are in town and expanding. This would really help to bring the data together and maximize the benefit.
Thanks, Louis. Fatima, I think I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Louis' brilliant clarification when it comes to the importance of digitalization. And to add to the importance of digitalization when it comes to network as well as customers, it is also crucial to take into consideration the digitalization of operational aspects. And this can really help further down the line to ensure that from a preventive maintenance, from availability perspective, digitalization can bring up efficiency into the picture, whereby as TAQA, we're looking into digitalization across the fleet, whereby we look into any sort of improvements when it comes to preventive maintenance, as well as ensuring timely monitoring of the performance of those assets during the operational phase.
Thank you very much. Mohsen, if I can come to you on another question that has come in, and it's about water wastage. So Louis just now talked about digitalization and 40% of that's about customer experience, but 60% on reducing waste. And we have a question from Paul. He says, we've talked about power wastage, but what about upgrading plants and systems to remove water wastage? Where does that fit within your investment program? Is reducing water losses an important part of your program, or does that sit outside this conversation?
Okay, no, actually the reduction in the wastage mainly is talking about the non-revenue water, which is mainly in the network and in the water company and utility company where we have non-revenue for water. It is maybe it is not in our scope as Aqua Power, as we are producer for the water and electricity as a developer. But definitely the digitalization, as mentioned by Ms. Fatima and Mr. Louis, that it will help a lot in determination of leakage rate. This is one of the big advantage of the communication with the digitalization together to solve this issue by applying IoT solution for leak detection and controlling the network and having better oversight over network and having clarity about, which is give the decision maker what need to be done at this right moment, at the real time.
Okay, thank you. Now, just for the Paul who was asking that question, at 11 o'clock, immediately after this panel, there is another panel discussion which is about water and wastewater management. I think that will be going into the topic of smart grids and using sensors to reduce wastage. So if Paul has time at 11 o'clock, you might find that one interesting as well. Okay, now I'm afraid we've come to the end of our session. We do still have some questions to go through. What I will do, for those of you who have sent questions that we haven't had time to get to, I will circulate the questions with the panelists, and if they are able to, they will respond either through MEED or directly. So hopefully we can sort of address everything. But that brings us to the end. Thank you very much for you, the audience, for joining us today and for all of your questions. But I would like to give a special thanks to our 4 wonderful panelists who've given us so much time and expertise and insight. Thank you, Mohsen, Louis, Fatima, and Andy, for your time today. Have a great rest of the day, and hopefully I'll see you soon at the next event. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Stay safe.